Welcome to today's session for the GDG Cloud Stockholm. We have today some wonderful speakers from the US, Wesley Chun and Martin Omander, and they will talk to us about serverless on Google Cloud and how to combine it as well with AI and machine learning. I'm Mariana Bokoy, and together with Mustafa and Zara, we're organizing Google Developer Group Cloud Stockholm and hope to see you more at our events. Mustafa, Zara, do you want to say something?
Hello, everyone. So good to see you here. And let's listen to Wesley, who is my role model personally. Yeah, literally. I learned Python more than 15 years ago from his book. I have my role model here, so
Oh,
I'm really
great.
excited.
You're reminding me that I need to make faster progress on the third edition. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zara, and I'm so happy to see you here.
Cool. Then let's hear from our wonderful speakers.
But hi, everybody. I'm Wesley. Like Martin, I'm also a software engineer. I've written a couple of Python books, as Mustafa's already mentioned. I also have a teaching career, actually longer than I've been an engineer. So I've been doing that as a parallel career. My job is to make sure all current and future developers are successful using Google Cloud and other Google developer tools and APIs. My main focus is on serverless, but I also focus on higher education, Google Workspace, and do machine learning. And I'm also a member of the Python community. So that's it for me. And hand it back to Martin, who will lead you through the majority of the talk.
If you can't read lips, what I was saying was that I worked at a bunch of startups in Silicon Valley. And before joining Google, I worked at Google in what seems like forever now. It's a hard place to leave. I'm in the developer relations team, and I grew up in Malmö, Sweden, and I lived 3 years in Stockholm på Kungsholmen vid Fridhemsplan. But now I live in Mountain View. I hope that came through that time. That says serverless. What? Why? Yeah. Why? So why do we even talk about serverless? I mean, you can go into Google Cloud or any cloud provider and just say, I want a computer, a server that has a fraction of a CPU or one CPU or two CPUs or up to 416 CPUs. You can configure how much RAM there should be, how much disk there should be. So you can provision servers in the cloud. So problem solved. We can run any code we want on these servers, right? Why do we even talk about serverless? So serverless, first off, it's a bit of a misnomer. Product marketing manager, PMM, has told us that it's a good marketing term. It's not really without servers, It's, of course, it is. They're still servers. It's just that you don't have to worry about them. So you write your code, you as a developer, you write your code, you solve your business problems, you store your data, and then you just give that code, upload it to Google and say, run it for me. So, and then Google figures out, should we run it on 1 or 2 or 100 servers? And that's completely transparent to you. So it is the fastest growing segment of cloud. You can see some good numbers there. And what if you go viral? If you are on servers, that means you will need to always worry about, do I have enough servers? Do I need to provision more servers ahead of Black Friday, for example, or a big event? With serverless, you just set it and forget it, and it runs, and Google figures out how many. And then also on the opposite side, if you don't go viral, if the opposite, like I have some applications that get like 1 user per day, and the user is in there for 10 minutes. That means with serverless, I pay only for those 10 minutes. And the rest of the day, 23 hours and 50 minutes, I don't pay. My app doesn't cost anything. If I were to run this on servers, I would have to rent a server for the whole day, even though one user uses it only for 10 minutes. So there is a spectrum, of course, in serverless. So at the bottom, we have these compute engine. That's what we talked about a minute ago. Like, I want to rent 1 server or 2 servers or 10 servers from Google. You have to really keep track of what servers you're renting, what you're running on them. That is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Then at the very top, on the other side of the spectrum, you have software as a service. That is like Gmail, for example. For Gmail, it's not like you have to think about, tomorrow I think I'm going to get a lot of emails. I better tell Google that I want one extra Gmail server. No, Google just takes care of that. Google just provides the service of Gmail for you, and Google figures out how many servers. So then there's a spectrum in the middle here, but platform as a service is there in the middle. Google App Engine, Cloud Functions, Cloud Run. This is where you give code to Google to run, and Google figures out how many servers. And we're going to talk mostly about that stage right there in the middle, platform as a service. All right, so here's another graph. Don't worry, lots of bright blue and green and red dots. But what this is saying is this is a spectrum of the spectrum we saw in the previous graph. What does that map to in different products on Google Cloud? But today we won't talk about all of these. We'll only talk about these here. Cloud Run, App Engine, and Cloud Functions. Those are the ones that most people use if they want to go serverless. All right, let's start talking about App Engine. That is Serverless 1.0. That's how I actually became a serverless programmer. I started using this in 2007 when it was still in beta. It came out in GA in 2008. So this one, why did Google build this back in 2007? Well, it turns out that there are a lot of things like running Linux, running Apache, running PHP, running MySQL on top of it, running, database, load balancer, all that stuff is the same for most apps. 90% of apps just want the same for that. So what the Google Cloud team did back in the mid 2000s was they abstracted all that away and called the product App Engine. So all you do is upload your code. So here's an MVP in Python. Python was the first language on App Engine. You need an app.yaml that tells Google what runtime you want. Here at Python 3.9, or later on we got Go and PHP and Node and so on. Then you need a main.py that is actually your code to run. So here it is. If you hit the URL at /, it returns hello world. And then you need a requirements txt file. This is similar to a package.json in Node. You just tell Google what libraries does my app need. So that's it. Boom. You deployed this and you had a very scalable app in the cloud. That was Serverless 1.0. Then Serverless 2.0 came along, and this was 2018, was it, Wes? Do you remember?
Beta in 2016, GA in 2017 for Cloud Functions.
GA, Google General Availability 2017. So this was, people were saying, okay, App Engine is great, but I just want to run one snippet of code. I don't want to set up a whole application. I don't want all that overhead. Here's my code. If somebody uploads something to cloud storage, run this little thing that processes the file, for example. So App Engine built in Cloud Functions for that. You deploy it from a command line, or you can even go into the Cloud Console. And there's a text box there, and you can write your code in text box, and then you can hit deploy, and it's deployed in the cloud. Also worth mentioning Cloud Functions for Firebase. That is if you're using, if you're building a mobile app, Cloud Functions for Firebase, the Firebase team has sort of wrapped up these Cloud Functions so they're a little easier to use from mobile applications. So here's how hello world would look like. Literally def hello world, return hello world. You don't need to tell Google figures out everything else. And next one. Yeah, so Cloud Functions. Oh, right. So then second generation of Cloud Functions has now come out and basically gives you more of everything, more memory, longer run times, longer timeouts, and so on. Cloud Functions, great for short snippets of code. All right, Google Cloud Run. Now this slide says Serverless 2.0. I'm partial. I really like Cloud Run. I would probably call this Serverless 3.0. Wes does not agree with me. Anyway, I love this. Why do I love Cloud Run? Well, here's the deal. Containers are a big deal. You see there the graph of search interest in containers. Developers are using containers a lot. Why do people like containers? Because you can use any language, any library. You can even pack binaries with them. The other day, I wrote a container where I needed special fonts on the server to render, and I server-side rendered fonts. And you can't put that in App Engine. You can't put that in Cloud Functions. But you can in Cloud Run because it's a container, and this is an industry standard. So I just said, please run this Unix install command to install these 3 extra fonts for emojis and Japanese characters, for example. Or if you want to pack a PDF generator inside your container, a binary, you can just do that. Industry standard, love containers. Another way of looking at it is convenience. So both for developers and for Google, actually, because when we had App Engine, developers kept saying, "Oh, can you support Rust? Can you support all these languages that C#, these languages that we weren't supporting at the time, or it's great you support C#, but I actually want the old version of C# two versions back because I have a dependency on that, and it breaks if I update." So with that, it becomes hard. We can't write App Engine with every single language for every single version in the world. But with containers, now you decide what goes in the container. And you don't have to choose between containers and serverless. Containers, as you might know, on GKE, on Kubernetes, you use containers all the time, right? But sometimes it's overkill. I would say actually most of the time it's overkill to use Kubernetes when you're writing a web app. But you can still use containers in serverless way. All right, so here with Cloud Run, here's how to build and deploy. Yeah, you write your Docker container. I was a little afraid of how to write containers. 2 years ago, containers was completely new to me. It's pretty easy, actually. But if you don't want to mess with Docker files, don't want to mess with containers, don't want to learn it, you can actually use Cloud Build Packs. That's at the bottom of this slide here. You can use Cloud Build Packs. Basically, that's also an open standard that Google just supports. That basically tells Google, hey, Google, please figure out what this is and sort of apply the right container for it. I don't want to write the container myself. So you can write your code either as a container or just say, deploy this source code and dear Google, you figure out the container. All right, then this is what Hello World would look like in Cloud Run. So again, we're using requirements txt to show what libraries we're using. This looks very similar to the example for App Engine. Let's see. Oh, right. So if we want to write a Docker file, Docker files aren't scary. Over there, you see that Docker file. I copy and paste that very Docker file 90% of my applications. So even if you don't know containers and Docker files, copy and paste that one. And then you probably want a Docker ignore as well, just to make your container nice and small. So either write your own Docker file, like the one on the left, or build and deploy with the bottom command there, gcloud run deploy -- source. So Docker and Docker files are optional. Right, and this is more of what we said before. So these build packs support most common languages. All right, let's wrap this up. The first half, so we have 3 serverless platforms in Google Cloud: App Engine, Cloud Run, Cloud Functions. When would you use each? Here is a table that shows for what use cases each one is good. I mean, this table could actually have check marks in every single box because you can write any application in any of these 3. I just think that, for example, Cloud Functions, they're great for workflow and orchestration, for example, because they're great for event-driven automation. But Cloud Run, that in the middle, can do pretty much anything. I actually don't use App Engine and Cloud Functions a whole lot. I use Cloud Run for all my stuff. But sometimes you just want, a very simple thing like run, whenever somebody uploads a file, run these 10 lines of code, and then Cloud Functions are great. And flexibility. Oh, right. This is the Nebulous app Wes has been talking about and been creating videos about and so on. This is an application that actually shows if you pick the wrong in quotes platform, you pick App Engine and you realize it should have been Cloud Run, or it's pretty easy to move code between them. So don't worry, just pick one and see what you prefer. And you can always change which platform you run on later. So this is an actual application that Wes wrote. If you follow that Google, link there, that short link, you will see Wes's example of how he wrote the code and then moves it between these 3 platforms. Use the right tool for the job. We talked about that. Latency, right? You want fast response times when you do serverless. Break up, right? Computing into components. Sometimes when you write something that runs on a server, you write this monster application that loads up, maybe a big Java monster that loads up and takes a minute to load, and then it sort of uses up all the memory, and then it's a big monolith. With serverless, you typically want many small services that you assemble. Break up your application. That tends to work better for serverless, and also it tends to work better, easier for developers to understand. Cost, they're free. I won't go into the details here, but they're free tiers for everything. So if you're developing, you probably won't pay a cent. But then if you get serious traffic, you will pay. I have some applications that receive actually quite serious traffic, hundreds of thousands of users per day, and I pay surprisingly little for cloud for the compute. Most of my app is actually for spent on egress network bytes, sending bytes, and that you have to pay for bandwidth. You have to pay for whatever platform you use. Right? Why go cloud? Life is good in the cloud. You go serverless because you don't want to mess with servers. That's pretty much this. And what do we have next? Bunch of resources. You won't remember all these, but good news, you're getting the slides. You can go through this at your leisure. There are a bunch of other APIs and platforms, right? Again, go through these at your own leisure.
Taking a quick step back to the other slide to talk about the nebulous sample. So nebulous, I think Mariana asked earlier, the reason why I call this nebulous is because it is an app that helps you learn serverless. So we just talked about it, but you know what? Talk is cheap, right? There's nothing more important than actually experiencing all this. And one thing Martin didn't say was that deploying to each of these platforms only takes about a minute or less than a minute typically. About 30 seconds. So somewhere between 30 seconds and 60 seconds, you'll have an app available around the world. And you don't have to worry about the scaling. You don't have to worry about users not being able to reach it from anywhere on the planet. It's all based on, any limitations they have in bandwidth, basically. But anyway, so I wrote this tool, this nebulous tool. It's called Nebulous because you can run it locally. You can run it on App Engine. You can run it on Cloud Functions. You can run it on Cloud Run, all without any code changes at all. You don't change the code whatsoever. It runs on any of the 4. You can deploy to all of them. So that's why it's nebulous. It's not quite settled, kind of a thing. But also nebulous describes clouds. So I figure that's probably a really good word to use to describe this. It's a pretty simple app. And like Martin said, if you go to the short link down here, you can get access to it. It also demonstrates the use of one of our cloud AI ML APIs, just because AI and ML is something that people should know about. It is not without a little bit of a learning curve, and so fortunately we have APIs that we can talk about with you that allow you to leverage the power of machine learning, but you don't have to know anything about it. Basically, the main idea is as long as you know how to call an API, you can leverage the power of machine learning. So that's one of the other features of this app. So it's a very simple app that translates from English to Spanish, But once you grab the source code out of the repo, you can change it to English to Swedish if you want. So this is basically the API for Google Translate, and whatever languages Google Translate supports, Cloud Translation's API is most likely able to support it as well. All right, so let's get to the last bits of the slides, and then I'm going to try and lead you through some of the a demo. Okay, so this is a demo app using a Cloud AI ML API that's deployable to all 3 platforms with no code changes at all. So there's a bunch of goals. Why did I write this app? One is to help users learn more about the differences between App Engine Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. Also to show you that, as Martin said, you can't really make a mistake. So you pick one which you think is the right platform to use. But if you write your app in a flexible way, like this app was written, you can actually switch between them. It's not impossible to do so. So it's not like, oh my gosh, once I pick one, I can't, I'm stuck on it forever. That is not true. And then I just mentioned that the other reason is to show you how to call Cloud and other Google APIs from any of our serverless platforms and we just happen to be focusing on AI and ML. You can choose any other type of Google API. And in our docs, we don't really have good docs to show you how do you call a Google API from serverless. And then similarly, in our API documentation, we don't give you examples of how do you write an app using this API and run it on serverless. We just don't have that crossover because everything's divided up into products. So that's another good reason why I created this app, is to show you how you can call Google Cloud or non-cloud APIs from serverless or from your applications wherever they're hosted. They don't have to be on serverless, but people have asked, so how do you call a Google API from serverless? Okay, so this app supports these 9 different deployments. I have a Node version and a Python version. The Node version is more straightforward because Node, anything 10 and newer is supported. So Node 10, 12, 14, 16 definitely work. For App Engine, Cloud Functions, and Cloud Run. We're taking advantage of build packs here so that I don't have to think about anything else but just deploying. And then Python 2 and 3, if you are a Python developer, you know that Python 2 and 3 are not compatible with each other. So it's a little bit trickier. So there's a little bit more drama on the Python side, but we can get a Python 2 app running on App Engine as well as Python 3. Python 2 is not supported on Cloud Functions, so you can only run Python 3 on Cloud Functions. And then if you can run Python 2 and 3 on Cloud Run if you do Docker and containers. If you don't, and you would just rather have the Google build system figure out what your app is made of and uses build packs to build it automatically, we only support Python 3. Build packs do not support Python 2. So if you want to run, keep on running your old Python 2 app on Cloud Run, you have to use Docker. Okay, so I'm going to demo. Maybe I'll ask the audience which one of these you want me to demo, and I'll just go and deploy it. Otherwise, I'll just randomly pick one to deploy. Okay. So here, for those of you who do Node and Python, this is the core of the application. So there's one giant translate call. So this is how you call the Cloud Translation API from JavaScript or from Python. So you can see they're both similar. The translate function is at the core of this application. I didn't show you the other bits because this is sort of like the main thing. But the main idea is that the app brings up a generic empty form, kind of like a Google search screen. You type in some text in English. When you hit, the submit button, it's going to translate it into Spanish or whatever language you want, and then it outputs that to the web template. So if the web request is a post, that means I've submitted something. If they didn't, that means I'm just going to just render the template, and then it has the empty form at the top. And then once they submit it, it comes back as a post. And so that we do all the real work inside that code that handles the post in both cases. So, for example, it basically cleans out the text that you typed in. And if it's not blank, then we package that up into, with a bunch of metadata, like what's the content, what's the parent is basically sort of like the parent path, I believe, if I remember this API correctly. And then the target language code is the 2-letter, language that you want to translate to. So for Spanish, it's ES. For Swedish, it's probably SE. And then that's all the metadata that you need. And you just call the Cloud Translation API, check if there's errors on the Python side. Otherwise, the translated text comes back. So you stick it in the template context with the original text followed by the translation. And then you render the template and boom, it goes. So it looks like this. So this is what 1990s, because I put 0 CSS on it because I'm trying to keep the sample as clean and easy as possible. So one of our colleagues always says, keep things simple. So keeping things simple means 1990s style HTML, like 1.0, basically. So it has the form, and then if you submit it, you'll see the previous translation, but you'll also get a form to submit for another translation. So that's how it's going to work. So hopefully we have a few minutes to demo at the end. But yeah, so this sample and going through it is covered in the Serverless Expedition video series. So if you want to see more on this, Martin is the host, so you've already heard him speak. So you'll see that he is the host of this video series that covers most of our serverless tools and features and things like that. So this is a demo of using cloud APIs. After we're done with these videos, that I'm going to work on how to call non-cloud Google APIs from serverless. And when you go to the repo, you already see the code samples exist. It's just it takes a while to make a video and get it edited and all that kind of stuff. But I have a nebulous sample that shows you how to call to use the Google Sheets API, so you can put things in a spreadsheet, and also another demo to show you how to call the Google Maps geocoding API, so you can like locate latitude, longitude of where a building or a structure or a landmark is located and things like that. So the code samples, all 4 code samples exist. So the cloud translation one, you already know there's a Python and Node version. And then for the workspace and maps one, they're in Python only for now. I'm learning Node, so this is a good example for me to kind of figure out how to do Node by porting these from Python to Node. So anyway, if you want to see more of Martin and all of the Serverless Expedition video series, just check out the short link there. Okay, so that is it. So here is our Twitter information. My daughter says hello. She loves drawing these anime characters. A copy of the slides. I'm going to send a copy of today's slides to Mariana, but the link here is to a presentation that I gave last month that's a longer one. It's actually a 1-hour talk, so there's like double the number of slides that we had today. Also, I gave this talk early last year, and so that there's a recording in case you missed something here. And then if you notice the progress bars down at the bottom, neither PowerPoint nor Google Slides has progress bars, but we can show you how to build it by using another serverless tool, which we didn't talk about today because that is part of Google Workspace. So that's Google Drive, Gmail, Calendar, DocSheet, Slides. There is a serverless platform there called AppScript, and Google Slides uses that. So yeah, so you can use the Google Workspace serverless tool called AppScript to actually build your own progress bars. So you can watch that video and get that code sample and learn how to do these progress bars yourself. Okay, so that is it as far as the presentation goes. Let's take some questions right now on the presentation, and then when we're done and whatever time we have left, I will try and do a demo of a live demo of this serverless nebulous serverless sample. So I'm going to hand it off to Mariana to help us field a few questions, and then once that's done, then we're going to go back and deploy this app so you can see it running live.
I was curious why. I saw a comment from Mustafa around how Python 2 is already end of life. I was curious, how come you also chose Python 2? Is it very often that people have questions around Python 2 stuff in App Engine?
That's a really, really good question. Good question. So yeah, so App Engine was our very first cloud product. As Martin mentioned, it launched in 2008, and that's when Python 2 was the biggest thing. Python 2 language that actually put it on the map. I started learning Python when it was version 1.4 back in 1997, and so that was a long time ago. But nobody heard of Python at that time. It wasn't, I think that it became viral when it was Python version 2, and that's when everybody learned it. And so there are a lot of people who have Python 2 apps that are just stuck on App Engine, and they haven't been able to upgrade because it's a lot of work. Python 3 is backwards incompatible to Python 2, so it's been very challenging for people to get off of it. So we, even though the language support is EOL'd, we have too many Python 2 apps running on App Engine still. So Google has taken a commitment to not shut it down. So we've committed long term to support Python 2 apps, but I'm working on content to help people upgrade to Python 3. So, if you dig around on the internet and you look up, serverless migrations and upgrading from Python 2 to 3, I'm helping people actively get off of Python 2 to 3. But there are some people that are afraid that we're going to shut down Python 2 and App Engine at some point. So I wanted to give them an option to moving it to Cloud Run, because you can keep it running on Python 2 forever because it is container based. And with the container, as long as there's an image that you can, base image that you can start with, you can keep Python 2 running forever. So that's the main reason why there's a little bit of Python 2. The purpose of my Python 2 content is to help them migrate to Python 3. So
Yeah.
that's my excuse.
Martin. Yes, Martin also had a comment there.
That's exactly right. Some of these App Engine apps were from customers that hired contractors or agencies to build their app. They don't have any idea where the source code is. Their entire business depends on it. And so what are you going to do, right? There's nothing you can do in those particular cases unless you want to hire another agency to write it from scratch using something else, Python 3 or Node or Java or whatnot. So yeah, there's Python 2 is going to be around for quite a long time.
Yes. Is it true that App Engine will be completely replaced by the Cloud Run?
That's a very interesting question. Certainly, as Martin mentioned, App Engine is from our serverless 1.0 generation of products. And we do want people to use the latest that we have because we put in a lot of research and we spent a lot of effort and engineering time to actually build Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. You can kind of imagine already that Cloud Run is sort of like the next generation product that is based on App Engine anyway. It was built by the App Engine team. The internal project name was, App Engine Next or something like that. So it kind of is App Engine, but without having the same sort of like like marketing and buzzwords behind App Engine. Cloud Run is sort of like the next generation version. So I wouldn't say completely replaced because, as we just mentioned, there will be people that have App Engine apps that cannot migrate. So we're going to keep App Engine running forever. But it is the purpose that you should be considering Cloud Run first, just because, again, containers. And getting CI and CD as part of the software development workflow today. It's just a more modern today's generation version of tool. It doesn't mean that you can't deploy App Engine apps. You can definitely use it, but so I wouldn't say replacement is the right word. It's just we would rather have users using Cloud Run over App Engine just because it's newer and all the new features are going into it. We do add new features to App Engine from time to time, but mostly it's because of enterprise usage that they're mostly going to be like security and networking new features, not like product new features in App Engine. But everything else, all the other new features, they're going into Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. So I wouldn't say replaced. Who knows? I mean, maybe one day, when you deploy an App Engine app, maybe it'll get executed by Cloud Run and you just don't know it. Right. So, but the App Engine name will still be around. So that was a really long answer to a very simple question, but it's not as simple when you're inside Google and working for cloud.
It
So yeah.
sounds like it.
That was very interesting point of view where you said there are people who are still using Python 2 and they do not know anything about tech. Somebody just some consultancy did the work and they do not know. I mean, they should pay a lot of money more to another consultancy to be able to upgrade and stuff. But that's really interesting because I for one like see this 2 to 3 migration as more of a like a software engineer where you have some sort of a challenge to solve, but at the same time to be able to keep up with the latest updates because you should update your dependencies, update your infrastructure, update whatever you have, basically your supply chain.
Mm.
But that's a very interesting point of view that you said that there are a lot of like as Martin mentioned also in the chat that there are millions of lines of code
Yep,
um, that that
that's
nobody
right.
can do anything about. So it should be there, and it's just
Right. And
gets
it,
the job done. Yeah, basically.
correct. And fortunately or unfortunately, it's not even a point of view. We actually have customers that are still
Hmm,
running Python 2 code. It's not like, oh, this came from my marketing people or whatever, right? We have paying customers that are paying us to continue to run their apps. Yeah, exactly. That's that kind of like, Martin just typed in a comment that speaks to exactly the power of serverless. You never have to think about machines. You never have to think about having a pager going off. It's just there, and a lot of times you just kind of forget, unless something bad happens, you don't even know about it, right?
exactly.
Mm.
So I know this is kind of a story for a long time ago, but I know we just had the royal funeral. But if we go back to the very first royal wedding that happened 11 years ago, that app was actually an App Engine app, and I stayed up overnight because in the UK it was in the morning, but for us is at night. And I was the one that would have to be telling users, "Oh, our system went down because it crashed because there was too much traffic for the royal wedding app," right? So start off with like 100 requests a second, then it went to 300, then the wedding started, it was 500, 800, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, eight
Wow.
thousand, and then when the royal kiss happened, it was like over 10,000 requests per second. And I was like, oh my God, please don't go down. And just kept on spinning up more instances of the app because, the serverless infrastructure monitors the traffic that's coming into your app and knows when is the time to spin up another instance of your app. And then, as the wedding ended and the traffic died down, it, auto scales all the way down to zero if it has to. But, it shut down instances when not enough traffic was coming in. And, the people who ran the app didn't have to worry about anything at all. So that's one of the beauties of serverless is that it's armchair deploy.
Mm.
Granted that if you have users 24 by 7, overall at the end, it's probably cheaper to run it on a VM, right? But then if you get no traffic, you're still paying for that VM 24 by 7. Whereas with serverless, it auto scales to zero. So that's another benefit as well too. So it really depends on your use case. Serverless is not great for everything, but you should at least explore it so you know whether it's the right thing or not, and you can be confident that you did all your research. I'm going to assume that you all know how to use Google Cloud already. You've signed in somewhere. So I guess I can go to the dashboard for your cloud stuff. So in the dashboard, you have access to all kinds of different tools that are available in the cloud for you. And then you can choose whatever service you want to use. So if you want to use App Engine, Cloud Functions, or Cloud Run, you go to the serverless section. We only have 3 platforms here, and you just pick whichever one you want to run. Okay. And then you enable it, and then everything's good to go. Cloud Run, because there's a container, you need to enable the registry as well too, because your container images have to go somewhere, right? With App Engine and Cloud Functions, for Cloud Functions, you just deploy the function. For App Engine, you just enable your app. You only have every project gives you only one App Engine app, so that's another limitation that App Engine has. But you can have any number of Cloud Functions, any number of Cloud Run services in one project, but you can only have one App Engine app. The other limitation with App Engine is that it is regional. So once you enable your App Engine app and you pick a region, you can no longer change it. Whereas with Cloud Functions and Cloud Run, you can have any number of Cloud Functions or Cloud Run containers, and you can deploy them to any region. So it really breaks away from a lot of the restrictions that App Engine provides, and that's why both of those are in this serverless 2.0 generation of products. Okay, so anyway, so you pick one, you enable it, and all that kind of stuff. But let's go to the good stuff. So the serverless app is in this repo. So go to GitHub, just search for Google Code Labs Cloud Nebulous Serverless. Okay, you can't forget that Nebulous Serverless. How many repos are going to have the word nebulous in it anyway, right? So you can take a look at the code. So we have the cloud samples in the cloud folder, the non-cloud stuff in the non-cloud folder, obviously. Then you can read a little bit more about it. So I kind of talk about it, what versions are supported and all these kind of things. So we're doing cloud. So go into cloud. Um, and so this one, it says, oh, there's a Node and Python version of this. What does this app do? How much does it cost? There's a free tier for all of these. So the translation API has a free tier, App Engine has a free tier, Cloud Functions, Cloud Run, all four of these have free tiers. So just learn about the pricing. So, I don't want you to write an app and then run away on costs. Be aware of what the pricing model is, what we charge for, what the quotas are, before you get yourself involved. Okay. And then so this talks about the app. These are the same screenshots you saw earlier, bunch of links. And then within each page, I give you specific instructions. So like on Python, if you wanted to run, so you take a look at the files here. So the files is basically, so all of the files here are to support running on all the different platforms. So I tell you here, like this is App Engine only, this is App Engine Python 2 only, this is Cloud Run only, this is Cloud Run on build packs for Python 3. So it basically tells you what all the files are. And then if you want to do a deployment, like if I want to run this locally on Flask and Python 2, these are the 3 instructions you need to run. For Python 3 locally, for App Engine Python 2, you run these commands. For Python 3 App Engine, you run these commands, or you follow these instructions and run commands when you need to. So I can just randomly pick one like this one. So it says Cloud Run. Oh, let's not do Python 2. Let's do Python 3 because everybody's coding Python 3. Let's do it build packs. So build packs is easiest because I don't have to worry about the Docker file. So anyway, so delete the Docker file because you can't have a Docker file, and then delete app.yaml. Well, you don't have to because these aren't used anyway. You can leave them there. So then you just run this command. So I'm going to delete the Docker file and then run this command. I'm going to cut and paste it, and I'm going to add region and folder. So it's completely, so it tells you down here, if you give this command plus region plus source, it'll give you a fully non-interactive deploy. In other words, the gcloud command will not ask you for anything. It's just going to go and deploy it. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. So go clone the repo. Oh, shoot. I already have it here. Let's pretend you didn't see that. All right. All right. So I clone the repo. Let's go to where it is. Let me just open up actually, let me just pop this into a separate window. Let's reconnect to the Cloud Shell. So every cloud project gives you access to kind of like a very small, not very functional VM. But the Cloud Shell just gives you a shell into your project, which is pretty useful. So let's see if this is big enough that you can read it. So that's where I'm home. So I'm going to go to Cloud, Nebulous, Serverless, get pulled to make sure I get all the latest. Here's Cloud and non-Cloud. So go to Cloud, go to Python. If I have time, I'll also deploy this to Node too. So let's delete actually, let's copy this so I don't accidentally make a mistake. So copy the Python folder, and it's going to copy it to /temp. So temp Python, now I can do anything I want with this. So let's remove the Docker file and all these extra things I don't need. Boom, that's done. So now I can probably just deploy it. So I'm just going to go to copy this command here, and then I'm going to add region and source. So paste that. Then I'm going to do -- region. I'm going to deploy to US West 2 because that's in Los Angeles, which is the closest to where we are. And then I'm going to do a source deploy so I don't have to do Docker. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and in under 60 seconds, this app will be running and available around the world. Yeah, so you can actually go into the logs to show you the build as it happens. So you can actually see it put together your Docker container, and how build packs actually makes a Docker file dynamically. You can't see that Docker file, but it does it internally. And then you can see it putting the layers of your container together. And then it will deploy your container to the registry. So right now, Cloud Run deploys to Artifact Registry. It used to be Container Registry, but Artifact Registry is the replacement for that. And once it's in the registry, the hashes are made and set, then it's going to take that image and it's going to deploy it to Cloud Run, and then it's going to set all the DNS for you. You don't have to, go in and change any of that stuff. Let's see. And once it's done deploying as well, it will also show you the URL that your app is running on, so that you can go straight to it and check it out, basically.
There was a question, choosing the region, how does that affect it?
Yeah. So pick the region closest to where your users are, not where you are, where your users are. Google Cloud regions. So when you just type Google Cloud regions, it actually will bring up a list, and you can kind of pick what continent are you on. Where are our data centers at? So, if we're in the Americas, like I said, I picked US West 2 because Los Angeles is the closest geographically to Silicon Valley, but all of you are probably going to be closer to, I don't know, is Belgium the closest? Finland. Yeah, looks like Finland's the closest. What do you do at home? Do you go to Finland?
Finland. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Europe North 1, that's probably the one that you guys are going to pick. It looks like it doesn't support Cloud Functions, though. So if you want Cloud Functions, you may have to go a little bit further, but it does support, actually, you know what? It doesn't support App Engine either. So Cloud Run, so that's another reason why you all should use Cloud Run, because it's really, really close. I mean, Frankfurt's not that far off. I guess, well, Holland, nope, Holland doesn't support it either. Belgium, okay, yeah. So I guess the closest to you guys, if you wanted to do App Engine and Cloud Functions, would be Belgium. So that's Europe West 1. So yeah, so pick the region that is the closest to where your users are, because you want to give them the shortest response time, okay? So let's see, blah, 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 deployment failed. Why? Oh, because I'm doing a live demo on the internet. That's why it failed. Is not ready to serve traffic. I don't know why. It's not. Oh, I wonder if I didn't enable the cloud translation API yet. Let's try that. G cloud services enable translation.googleapis.com. I hope that's the name of it. Nope. All right, go back into the dashboard. So I'm going to use a search engine. I'm going to look up translation. Authorize. Okay, so Cloud Translation API. Ooh, it is not enabled. Okay, so let's turn it on. Oh wait, that's AutoML. Where is the non-AutoML? Let's close this for now. Oh, here it is. Let's see. Let's go to our API. And let's check which APIs are enabled. So when you go to your API manager, down at the bottom, it shows you which APIs you have enabled. So hopefully Cloud Translation API is down here. Okay, that's working. All right, let's see what else I may have not done right. Let's take a look at the logs. So you get all these helpful links that help you find the logs so you can find out exactly what happened. Oh, Python is not found. Well, that's not good. Why is Python not found? All right. Let's see. Profile. Let's remove the Docker ignore just in case that was messing it up. Let's see. Check requirements. That looks good. Python version. All right, let's try it again. This time, I'm going to go track the build.
It's actually really interesting that this happened because we get to see how one would debug as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, if this doesn't work, I'll just try another deployment. They all should work. I can't think of a reason why they wouldn't work, but we'll see. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. It's just kind of surprising to find that one of the reasons why it doesn't work. So let's see if it can start Python. So that's the most important step. Okay, so it looks like the build works. So let's go back and see what Cloud Run says. Okay, so we're just waiting for it to route out. 1 second. Fun.
I have left
Okay, so yeah, so basically what happens is whenever you get any kind of failure, whether it's runtime or build errors, we generally give you enough clues on what's happened so you can go and find out what the issues are, and then you can go and deploy. Okay, so let us remove this and do it again. CD Cloud Serverless Cloud. Let's try Node this time. Node.js temp. All right, so what are the instructions for deploying the Node version? So I'll go back up here. Yay. Oh well, let's just do App Engine. Yes. All right. Fortunately, it takes less than a minute. I've seen other serverless platforms take like 15, 20 minutes. So the speaker has to go and talk about something completely different. But fortunately, we don't have to do that. So yeah, so this one's App Engine and Node.
Deployments look a lot different than when I did it years and years ago.
Yeah, everything's changed because we don't now we're using G-Cloud to deploy it. Many years ago, the App Engine original launch tool was called app config. So you would do appconfig.py space update.
That's what I did.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. And so that's been replaced by G-Cloud, which is the general cloud tool that we use for all cloud services now. But yeah, so wow, it looks like it's improving the build performance. I didn't know it was possible. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So, okay. So it looks like it's deployed. Now it's, again, setting up DNS, setting up load balancing, and all the little things that you would have to worry about if you were a DevOps person to actually get the thing to work. Okay. So if we were doing this on a local machine, then you would run this gcloud app browse command like it says here, but I'm using Cloud Shell, which is basically the VM in the cloud, so that won't work. So I do need to actually cut and paste this link. All right, I have to copy and paste it. And there you go. So here it is deployed live. So I can type hello world. How did they know that? I was going to type hello world. Shocking, shocking. And submit it. It's going to call the Cloud Translation API. Make sure you have the right permissions. Make sure the API is enabled. And then it sends the service, it sends the payload to the API. Then it waits for the response to come back. And through all that time, it already came back, right? It's very, very fast, but it has to go through all those steps, right? So anyways, there's that, and there's so that's English to Spanish. So what I would suggest is you guys can go to the repo and clone this thing and go and change the language to Swedish or whatever is your language of choice. So you can just do git clone. So the git clone command is right here. Just run it right here. But just dig into the source code. So I kind of already showed it to you in a slide, but if you want to actually see it, the whole thing. So I showed you the translate function here. What I didn't show you was everything else. Obviously, for Node, you have to do an export, and then you have to set things up. So here's the part where you set the target language. So make it bigger. So you can change that to Swedish or whatever is your native language, just to see how accurate Google Translate is today. And then, so, we have Express, the web framework. We have Nunjux, the templating engine. This is how you import a Google Cloud API to use in your app. I launch an Express app. I'm going to configure the templating system. I instantiate a client for the API. I set my port number. I set my source language, my target language. And I have to go and get my project ID because that's the parent thing. The parent thing requires you to put a project, the project's slash, and then either your project ID or project name. And then we have to start the server on port 8080. If this is Cloud Run, if it is App Engine already has a server, so you don't have to do it. So that's for getting it to work on Cloud Run. But anyway, that's the entire app. And that's the Node version. The Python version is going to be very similar to that. So just kind of like looking at the code here. On the Python side, we have, I mean, it's almost going to be identical to the Node one, right? So I'm going to get the project ID. I have to create a client for the API, my source and target languages, my parent. Then here's the translate code I showed you guys earlier, and then just start the server at the bottom. Again, that's for Cloud Run. For App Engine, there already is a server. So anyway, so I hope this was a good walkthrough of this very, very simple, short example. Both code samples are less than 70 lines of code, basically. I'm pretty sure the Node one is also just that short as well, too. So are there any questions?
For users all over the globe, how could that be different? Do you still need to choose the region? I think that was the question about.
Okay, so yeah, so that's something you don't have to worry about. If you only want to deploy one deployment of your app to one region, it can be reached globally. That's not a problem. If I deploy to Los Angeles, you guys can actually hit this app even though it's in Los Angeles. Where is it? Here. Well, I guess it's too small for you to see, but if you can kind of figure out this URL, you can go and visit the app. It's just that it's farther away so that it will be harder for them to reach it. However, if you do choose, if instead of, okay, let's say you're not using App Engine, you're using Cloud Functions and Cloud Run, and you deploy your service or your function to different regions, um, then you're going to give them the specific URL to hit that region, that app in that region. Otherwise, if you don't want to worry about that at all, you can set up a Google Cloud load balancer and send everybody to one well-known URL, and then it'll just, divide it up into like, where is this traffic coming from? And then it'll figure out the best place to send you. So even if, for example, you guys are the closest to Belgium, if for some reason the Belgium service is being overwhelmed, because so many people are trying to get to it, then the load balancer can automatically shift future traffic to like Germany, which is only slightly further away, but at least still within your region. Okay, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, just thanks. You were amazing, and thank you for your time and the demo and the debugging.
Sure.
And it was fun to have you here.
All righty. Happy to help. There's a good number of people who are interested in it based on the number of forks and stars. So I think this is, again, a great tool for different purposes, right? To help you learn more about each of the three platforms, to help you learn how do you write apps so that you can move it from one to another, and also learn a little bit about how to call a cloud AI and ML API. All right. Well, thank you very much for hosting, everybody.